So that's $120 billion since that $16.5 billion this last fiscal year to prevent veteran suicide. And we can do better. This is my buddy, we'll introduce him in a second. And that's all this is going to be a discussion between people who don't agree with each other. And that's exactly what I want it to be. I know half you guys think the other half are crazy, and I agree with both of you. So the intent, the commander's intent, and I'm not the commander here, but I'm going to say I am, is to make sure that you're exposed to alternative therapies that you wouldn't normally be. So, and you're going to sit across the table from somebody, and instead of throwing tomatoes at each other, we're going to eat a few of them together, which I think is very important. So if we can, we're just going to start here. I want everybody just to introduce themselves, please, and explain kind of your background about what you're doing, and then we'll get to these other cats remotely. You want to start with Mr. Luttrell? We'd like to start with you, ma'am, and then we'll work our way around.
Thank you. Carolyn Clancy, an Assistant Undersecretary for Health for Research, Education, and Healthcare Innovation. Very happy to be here.
I am Ilse Wiekers. I am the Deputy Executive Director for VHA Office of Mental Health, practicing psychiatrist with San Francisco VA.
Good morning, I'm Wendy Tinhula. I am one of the Deputy Chief Research and Development Officers in VA's Office of Research and Development, and a psychologist by training. Started my career at the Baltimore VA.
Good morning, Sean Deadweiler, Black Veteran Empowerment Council President. Happy to be here, talk about real issues and how we can actually solve things in the community I support.
I'm Edward DiGirolamo, CEO of Applied Science International and the Executive Director of HBOT for Heroes. I'm here to hopefully share some of the stories I've got regarding HBOT with our veterans.
My name is Mike Olson. I'm the Executive Director of PESI, and we are the largest provider of continuing education to mental health professionals in the world.
Good morning. My name is Pat Murray. I'm the Legislative Director of the VFW.
Good morning. I'm Juliana Mercer. I'm a Marine, Iraq, and Afghanistan veteran, and I've been working with our wounded warriors both in uniform and out of uniform. I don't think anyone here is crazy. I think there's no one-size-fits-all solution, so I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Good morning, Tammy Bartlett, Vice President, Government Affairs for Student Veterans of America, here to represent over 1,600 chapters and almost 750,000 student veterans, military-connected students, their family members, caregivers, and survivors.
Good morning, John Retzer with DAV, Deputy National Legislative Director for Health.
Good morning, Andrew Petrie, Marine. I'm a health policy analyst for the American Legion.
Could we do the guys that are remoting in? Shar.
Hi. Hi, Shar E. Cognac. I'm a Navy SEAL spouse. My husband, Robert, is with me. Retired Navy SEAL of 25 years.
All right. Is Debbie up there too?
I am here. I am, excuse me, I've had a terrible cough, but I'm Debbie Lee, the founder of America's Mighty Warriors and the mother of Navy SEAL Mark Lee, the first SEAL that we lost in Iraq, and been honored to be able to continue to support our veterans, our Gold Star families, and our troops. So thank you for having me today.
All right. Is Rob there?
Hey, this is Robert O'Neill. I'm a 17-year Navy SEAL, half of that at a tier 1 level. And I've gone through some of the treatment that we're going to talk about today. I want to share some stories, so I really appreciate everyone's time. Thanks for having me.
Roger that. I'd now like to yield to Morgan Luttrell for 5 minutes for his opening comments.
Thank you all for joining us today. This is one of many conversations we're going to have as we go downstream from these invisible and physical wounds that our veterans are suffering from. The challenging part about the issues that we're trying to solve is that, number one, we have no idea how the brain works. We know that we can't cure brain disease or brain injury. So how do we fix emotional and cognitive instabilities that lead our veterans to a suicide, or the one-S pistol range, as we like to refer to it? We have Department of Veterans Affairs, and then we have all these organizations that wrap themselves around our veteran community in order to try to fix this issue. And over the past 50 years, the suicide rate in our veteran community is climbing, which means we're doing something wrong. And we throw as much money as possible. And I'm not blaming anybody for this, again, because every veteran is different. Every veteran has his or her own emotional and cognitive lanes that they have to navigate by themselves. And then those that succumb to those issues are those the ones that's what we're trying to prevent from happening. I say on a daily basis, I believe wholeheartedly that the VA should be leading the effort, proactively, not reactively. Politics is a very ugly thing. And I think that the VA is stifled in many areas, unfortunately. Maybe that's something that as congressional members, we can help break loose by, with, and through the secretary, giving you the latitudes that you need in order to erase all these problems. These holistic approaches that you're going to hear about today, and ones that we believe in wholeheartedly, science and research is a scary thing sometimes. But when we're losing our veterans at such a rate, we're doing something wrong. And I don't know what we have to throw at the wall. I don't know what we have to introduce, and I don't know the exact answer. I wish I did. But here today, face to face, in a calm, collective, efficient, and effective manner, we're going to discuss possibilities and the way forward in order to move in a direction that would decrease these numbers to zero, period. There's going to be topics that we're going to talk about that scare the living hell out of people. I got it. I do. But what if that's the one thing that we're missing? What if it is the opportunity? A chance of a lifetime comes around every time you shake somebody's hand and you walk into a door. It doesn't come around once. So let's be open-minded to that. Thank you.
My distinguished colleague from Texas, Barry DeLead, is a retired Navy SEAL with multiple combat tours and 100% service-connected disabled veteran. He knows exactly what the hell he's talking about. The chair now recognizes General Jack Bergman.
Thank you. I'm going to yield my time to Juliana.
Okay, we'll get to you.
But it's time.
Yeah. The chair now recognizes my distinguished colleague and world-renowned urologist, Dr. Murphy.
Yes, over there. Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. We have these things called multidisciplinary conferences, especially when we deal with cancer. And we sit around a table and we look at things from many different lenses in the treatment of disease states. And we put together, treatment plans. I'm a surgeon. I've used hyperbaric oxygen off and on for infectious and inflammatory disorders for more than 3 decades. This is personal to me, not that I'm a veteran, but that I serve a large number of veterans in my district. In fact, in Eastern North Carolina, we're a very heavily military district. 1 in 10 of my constituents actually is a veteran. And it is personal to me in seeing how many of our fellow veterans or our veterans go through the throes and the pain and the anguish that leads them, sadly enough, culminating in the taking of their own life. Calculated 22 a death a day. Some people say 17, other people say up to 44 of our veterans commit suicide every day. What is happening now is not working. And the definition of insanity, we all know, is doing the same thing and expecting different results. You'll hear today some testimony regarding hyperbaric oxygen. when first faced with this in regards to treatment of PTSD and TBI, was a skeptic, as many people are, but scrubbing the data, interviewing people, going to chambers, having actually done dives myself for intractable headaches after my brain tumor surgery 4 months ago, I am an ardent believer that this is a therapy that, if not utilized by our VA, I'll just be point blank in saying I believe it is medical malpractice, because we are not utilizing something that is potentially life-saving. And I'm going to submit for the record here, and we're going to bring this up in a committee meeting here, a paper by the NIH last year in October that is a synthesis of research done over the last decade that shows overwhelmingly that hyperbaric oxygen applied in the correct setting makes the difference in the lives of our veterans with suicidal ideations and many of the other disorders, headaches, depression, et cetera, for our veterans. And I'll be very clear, I don't use those words of malpractice easily. I don't. But then placed with what we call the preponderance of evidence, I believe this is something that should be offered in every veterans hospital for those individuals who are at the end of their rope. And with their at the end of their rope, the only thing that they see is suicide. We need other alternatives than what the VA is offering today. This, in my opinion, is one of those alternatives. We had a great hearing on MDMA earlier this year, only to be told by the FDA that it was not approved. Can you imagine the heartache that those individuals who have gone through this or had hoped to go through this then face? We can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. I'm not going to listen to the arguments, or I will listen to them, but I won't agree with the arguments that this hyperbaric oxygen is a dangerous method. Yes, look, guys, aspirin is dangerous. But then faced with death, look at the risks and benefits of these different treatments. So I'll say here today, not as a psychiatrist, not as a psychologist, but as a surgeon and as somebody who cares about patients, and I have in my entire career cared about the patient in front of me, that we need to do a better job for our veterans, and that's why we're here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Chair now recognizes the distinguished gentleman from Ohio and fellow veteran, Mr. Davis.
I just want to thank you, Derek, Congressman Van Orden, for putting this together. You know, a lot of times as a more junior member, it's hard to get a hearing that you want in the committee of jurisdiction, even when you're on the committee of jurisdiction. So these kind of informal convening things, a lot of times turn out to be way more productive. So thanks for taking the initiative to do it. And Dr. Murphy, I couldn't have said it better. Hyperbaric is just one of many, and I'm glad we're trying to innovate and provide more care for our veterans. And as has been said and will be said again, I'm sure what we're doing isn't working. So, you know, anyone can find an excuse. Leaders find a way. I'm glad to be here amongst leaders. Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York and fellow veteran and Navy man, Congressman Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Van Orden, for organizing this. And has anyone, just, you don't have to answer, but has anyone read The Body Keeps the Score? I see a lot of nodding heads. I've read it 3 or 4 times. In 2016, I was walking in a crosswalk and I got hit by a car. And the resulting TBI launched me into a lot of sympathy for some of the things that we're talking about here, and researched all of these, as well as many of the techniques found in The Body Keeps the Score. If you've not read it, I recommend it to you. And the fundamental premise is that the human brain, when it experiences trauma at any point, whether that's childhood trauma or trauma in combat or trauma from a life event, that it manifests itself in many complex ways throughout the body and affects the entire health of the individual. And further in his premise, the conclusion is that that our medical system is captive to the pharmaceutical industry, and those are the only treatments that are considered are pharmacological chemical treatments, and that many others, like we'll discuss here today, are precluded or excluded explicitly by the handbooks that that allow for treatment. And so one of the things that we can do at the VA and in treating veterans with the crisis that we have, perhaps, is to explore things that are, outside of perhaps the traditional medicine. And a lot of those are outlined in that book. So the limit of my expertise is probably found within those pages. I have 500 days at sea on a submarine. You may think that's a hyperbaric chamber, or some other form of torture. I'm not sure, but it is interesting that when the captain wanted to have the highest performance from his crew, he would increase the partial pressure of oxygen in the submarine. That could be both just by percentage or increasing the overall pressure within the boat. And by golly, it worked. You'd be shocked at the people that show up at 3 a.m. on the midwatch that can't sleep, that are wide-eyed, and they go and they look at the spectral analyzer only to discover that oxygen is well above 21%, or whatever the partial pressure is. So there is definitely a link between how the brain functions and the presence and pressure of oxygen. So I always wanted to try that. So anyway, that's a bit from my experience. That's why this is important, is that we find other solutions. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
For the record, I was not driving the car in 2016 that ran over my distinguished colleague from New York. And also, I don't even know what a spectral analyzer is, to throw that out there. The chair now recognizes the distinguished gentle lady from Oregon, Ms. Chavez-Reamer.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't come at this as from a veteran standpoint. I don't come at this from an expert in healthcare. We do serve a population in mental health and wellness clinics that we serve back home in Oregon, but on the private side. And we're talking about Spravato therapy, ketamine therapy, whatever we can do to treat any sort of trauma or PTSD, where end of life, where people are experiencing that, we do that. But I come at this from a respect for my colleagues who are here. Veterans are important to all of us in our districts, and as a member of Congress, we have to coalesce around good policy. And so whatever I can do for my fellow colleagues, I will be here to listen and make sure that we move forward in the best practices that we can. And you need all of us to put that pressure on. And so that's why we're here. So thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, all of you, for allowing me to be here.
Yes, ma'am. The chair now recognizes the distinguished gentleman from Guam, Mr. Jim Moylan. I would say have a day to you, sir.
Half a day, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the invitation. Guam, of course, is a dateline away from continental U.S. It takes basically a full day to get back home, which I'm going happily over the weekend. We have a great majority of the highest enlisted per capita and continue to do so. But our service for our vets is very limited. We do have a naval hospital out there that has about 64 beds, not enough to provide the services we need for our vets. It's a continuous issue for our district in assistance with their claims and assistance with filing for their veterans' rights, but we do help them. There are a lot of groups out on the island that also assist in filing their claims, but there's not enough services, especially in the psychiatry and psychological treatment of our vets. I visited our facilities, our CBOC and other treatment areas, but it's so small and so limited. And for the vet's care that is necessary, they have to either fly to Hawaii, which is 8 hours away, and suffer through that, or 7 hours from Hawaii to get to California for better treatment. We don't have the numbers enough registered to get what we necessarily need as a VA hospital in addition to service the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, another high enlistment rating, or the free associated states that just became a part of the treaty for CFAC also, where we need are these independent nations to be part and defend for, again, in the Indo-PACOM situation. They too also have a lot of vets as well. We're like starting from the bottom. The support is much needed, and I'm sure I'm going to meet all my vet friends when I get back home. So solutions are necessary. Treatments is a must, and we will continue to voice our concern for the people of Guam and the Indo-PACOM area, and I appreciate all your support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentle lady from Iowa and the chairwoman of the subcommittee on health for the VA.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, and fellow veteran, I apologize.
Thank you. This is my status. I have a big voice about the plans we think within for being here. We know that this is an important topic. We have held roundtable for this issue, and I think I would say not too many times, and that is one veteran suicide, two veteran suicide. And it doesn't want to see another one of his colleagues and sort of commit suicide. So, you know, those therapies that can be beneficial that have propensity for abuse that are guided by assisted therapy, I think is a very important topic. Part of the product that we're making, not for everyone, but certainly there are people who can use ordinary health. Very disappointed to be on FDA's action and what they will continue to consider EPA their assisted therapy and other often childhood trauma. There are veterans like that. They can meaningful and
the general lady yields back. The chair now recognizes Commander Ryan Zinke, distinguished member of Congress and former Navy SEAL.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sit on appropriations, so how it's supposed to work is the authorization is supposed to authorize it. So I'm very supportive of the authorization process, and thanks for having this forum. I think we can get a lot done. On the appropriation side, if it gets authorized, my job is to make sure it's funded. So and how it's supposed to work for everyone, I know there's a little off issue, but I am the mentor on there. It's supposed to be authorization, then budget control, then appropriations. So this is the first step of getting the authorization side and getting wording in law to make sure we give alternate solutions and use what we do best as innovation. If we're looking at the government being innovative, we got all sorts of problems. So sometimes this is why we get involved and make sure that Congress can allow the path for innovation and new techniques and do what we do best, is serve our veterans who have served us. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back and thank you for holding it, and members, I appreciate your dedication to it.
Yes, sir. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentle lady from Virginia and chairwoman of the subcommittee on VA for oversight, Ms. Kiggins.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for holding this meeting. And this isn't the first time that we've been in this room discussing alternative treatments and therapies for our veterans. Just last week, we were talking about the VA, and in my district, chiropractic care is an issue. And as a nurse practitioner, I spoke to the fact that we should be treating veterans where they're at. So whatever they best respond to, those are the pain modalities that we need to be approving and making sure that we are making available and accessible to our veterans. So we've been here before, we've had this discussion, but I think nurse practitioners specifically do a really good job at thinking outside the box and what our patients best respond to. So I'm very glad that we're here today. I'm excited to listen and to learn. I too am tired of attending funerals for veterans in my district, which I'm Hampton Roads, Virginia's 2nd district, large veteran population. I just spoke to a female Navy or female Marine helicopter pilot this weekend who was getting out of the Marine Corps, who was almost in tears, just talking about her transition and what she had seen in the Marine Corps and how difficult this process was for her. So, everybody handles that transition process a little differently. And for those of us who have served, and we need to be mindful just that everyone responds differently. We need to be thinking outside the box. And our job here in Congress is to make sure that all tools are available to veterans. So it's certainly an honor to be here, and I look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
The gentle lady yields back. We're going to go to our witnesses now. We're going to start with Mr. Rob O'Neill. He is on the screen there. Rob and I have been friends for I don't know how long. He's a retired Navy SEAL senior chief, which is awesome. And he's, if you read the papers, you may have heard of him before. He's a renowned SEAL that has dedicated his life to his country. And just like a bunch of us had some issues with that. So Rob, you take about 5 minutes or so and tell everybody your story, please.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time today. It's very important. What's happening right now that I see people with different points of view getting in the same room to discuss it is very important. I really appreciate your time. My quick background, I spent half of my career at the Tier 1 level. I was involved with some of the most high-profile missions. I was on the mountain with a coalition to try to rescue Marcus Luttrell in 2005, the lone survivor. I left my 4-year-old daughter at her Easter tea party on my birthday, Good Friday, April 10th, 2009. And 15 hours and 46 minutes later, we had a full head count of Navy SEALs in the Indian Ocean to rescue Captain Richard Phillips. And I was on Chalk 2 to fly into Abbottabad, Pakistan to kill Osama bin Laden, which we did, and we all got out alive. But these are high-profile missions. I was on some 400 other combat missions. But there are so many other men and women out there who had much tougher jobs than I did. I just have a different platform, but I want to talk about the humanity that goes with it, because you see the stuff in the movies, but you don't realize that some of these guys that jumped for Captain Phillips on a Friday afternoon, they're mowing their lawn, trying to figure out how they're going to pay their mortgage. All of a sudden they get a message and they're jumping to rescue people. We go into spots, shoot bad guys. We have men and women who are worried about getting blown up all the time. I've seen the look in their eyes. But for me, I can only talk about myself because every veteran is different. Like Congressman Luttrell said, it was normal for a while because that's just what we do. For a long time in my career, I knew Navy SEALs, I knew their families, and I knew bartenders. And everyone that I worked with did the same thing, and it seemed normal. But for me, as far as post-traumatic stress, now the traumatic brain injury came with it, and we didn't realize at the time, even in training, blowing up breaching charges right next to our heads was affecting us. And that's making us think differently and affecting the gray matter. But the further I got away from it, the more I realized the nation asked a lot of us, and a lot of pressure comes with that. Every vet's different, but I started to think about what we were doing and why we were, there are certain people. I remember one guy in particular. I was in his house at 3 a.m. I killed him in his own bedroom, and I think in front of his wife. And he was an Al-Qaeda guy. But then I started to think later on, like the 7-year itch. Why did I shoot him? Well, he went for a gun. Well, why did he go for a gun? Well, because I was in his room. Well, why was I in his room? And it goes on like that. And you start thinking about the humanity on the other side as well. And along with that comes the depression of what could I have done different, the anxiety of what comes tomorrow, and then the self-loathing. And I've seen that with other veterans. They just can't forgive themselves, and myself included. And, a lot of veterans go to self-medication with the bottle, which I do not recommend. And I've done it to myself. It's bad. A lot of guys go to too many pills, even though some pharmaceuticals do work. It's not a one size fits all. But I started to get into psychedelics, and that's what I want to talk about, because they're very, very important. And again, everyone is different. I've done psilocybin, which works well. I've done 5-MeO-DMT, which is amazing. I've done MDMA, which I thought was good, but my personal favorite is called Ibogaine. And Ibogaine is not a psychedelic. It's a plant-based drug from a plant-based medicine from Gabon. And all it does is it kind of gives you a tour of your own soul. And I just finished up in July my second. The thing for me that I don't like is I need to go out of the country because I can't get it here. I have to go out of the country to different places where it's legal. The last time I went was with 4 other veterans, all special operators, all Army, and I can't talk about anyone's individual experiences, but it's the one thing I hear when people are against these psychedelics and these plant-based medicines is it's a club drug. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Ibogaine is going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life. And it's not fun. I don't enjoy it. It's actually like going through a nightmare. The peak for me, when I take Ibogaine, it lasts about 50 hours, but the peak's about 11 hours of the worst nightmare you can imagine. You're in a dark room with music playing, and it's your mind talking to your mind, and it shows you the worst stuff you've seen or can imagine, and it's your mind working with it. But you can talk to it. It's scary. It sucks. The next 24 hours is horrible. But as soon as we get done with that and they do the 5-MeO DMT, which lasts about 3 minutes, it's almost like you're cured. I was talking to some of the veterans, and I'm talking 25-year Army Special Forces Command Sergeant Major, saying that tell the CEO of this company that she just saved my life because I was going to kill myself next week. And I can't explain how it works or why, but it just does. It gives you a tour of yourself. It makes you grateful for showing it to yourself. But then most importantly, it honestly teaches you how to forgive yourself and love yourself. I can't explain it, but it after you finish the treatment, it initially lasts 4 months that the healing stays with you. And that's the time where you can start to get better schedule for yourself in the morning. For me personally, wake up, do yoga, study French, play with my 6-month-old daughter if she lets me sleep. But the high is just there. And this is a part of it. It's very important, I think, for people to realize this is actual treatment. It's actual medicine. It's been around for about 5,000 years and it works. And when I say legalize Ibogaine, I don't mean like so we can have a corner shop in New York City. I'm talking medically administered Ibogaine with professionals in a safe environment where people know they're safe. And the healing just works. It works for everything from heroin addiction to fertility to PTSD. It helps with gray matter. And there's been studies about everything from dudes blowing themselves up that got studied at Stanford and then a couple of months later re-examined and it healed. And again, there's nothing fun about it. When I hear people say it's a club drug, I couldn't imagine taking Ibogaine and then going to a club. That would be the most, it's horrific in a safe environment, but it works after about 48 hours and it lasts for a long, long time. And some guys, some men and women, it just cures right away. For me, I'm going to be doing it probably at least once, maybe twice a year, just for my crazy head. But I don't need to go to Mexico or Costa Rica to do. I shouldn't need to go to Costa Rica or Mexico to do this. There should be a way through the VA if you want to help with the healing and truly cure veterans. But I don't think as a left, right, or independent point of view, I think we should agree we need to heal the men and women that fought for this country, that will continue to advocate for other veterans. And just it's very important to realize it's simple, it's easy, it's healthy, and it works. And I'd be happy to talk offline with anybody. I don't want to sit here and be on my soapbox the entire time, but that's some of my experience. But there's other cognitive stuff, other psychedelics, and other plant-based medicines. I'd love to come down and be in person, but I can't tell you again how much I appreciate Congressman Van Orden for setting this up. Everyone sitting in the room and on Zoom, very important conversation, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, Rob. And thanks for your service to our country, dude, for real. And just for a second, can you guys maybe address this from a VA's perspective, ma'am, about, your thoughts on this particular treatment and how it's being administered? Can we,
So we did actually have a meeting with researchers from Stanford. Before I get into the details, though, Congressman, I just want to thank you for doing this. Your opening in terms of people listening to each other and very, very importantly, getting to hear personal experiences, I think is incredibly welcome, very, very important. And want to thank all of the veterans for their service to our country. And we couldn't agree more that even one is too many.
Well, thank you for showing up, ma'am. I appreciate it.
We met with some researchers at Stanford, I want to say 2 years ago, is that correct? And frankly, we're blown away by their results. It was still early. They weren't quite at a point of publishing. But what was quite remarkable was consistent with Mr. O'Neill's experience, people felt a lot better and they had very detailed documentation of symptoms and also had a lot of brain imaging that went with it that reflected serious changes. At that point, we actually walked through with them how we might actually even begin to think about it. If, for example, if we were going to give it in VA, because some people have some adverse cardiac effects, which is a bit of an unknown in terms of how prevalent or how common, but you don't want to discover actually that it was more common than you did, would that require an overnight stay and so forth. So not every community-based outpatient clinic is going to have that and so forth. And I frankly thought we would hear more from them again. And I believe talked with them about getting appointments at a VA so that they would be eligible for funding, which happens a lot with us. Our researchers work with our academic affiliates and so forth. But everything we heard would say that this is definitely warrants more exploration and consideration for the veterans we serve. Over. But I would ask Dr. Wiekers or Tanhula if I got that wrong.
Your memory is right, man. No, so we've not heard further follow-up since then, but I do actually know the researchers and folks at Stanford.
Is that Dr. Williams?
Yeah.
Are you waiting on Dr. Williams to reach out to you?
I have not heard, we have not heard back from Dr. Williams since we had the conversation.
That's
with
the question. Are you waiting for Dr. Williams to engage with the VA? Or is the VA going to reach out to Dr. Williams and say, okay, so now here we go. This is the problem. You're not talking to him. He's not talking to y'all.
I can send an email.
And
to
we're
him when I
stuck
get
in the
home.
middle.
Yeah.
So my question is, after 2 years, nobody's engaged. Because I'm going to walk out of here and call him, like, hey, call the VA right now.
Yeah, I did actually.
Because the study has been published.
I reached out a couple of times to his kind of senior mentor and actively encouraged that they pursue this affiliation with VA because we would be interested in considering something and that it wouldn't be a quick and easy process because it's not legal.
Sure,
in
the
this
VA
country.
has very stringent guardrails, left, right, and center, no doubt. You're going to have to replicate this study before you can engage with this kind of treatment inside the VA, correct?
Yeah.
The VA is actually going to have to reconduct the study to compare the results, correct?
Either VA or some other funder could fund it, yes.
And I'll just jump in. The other consideration is whether, so we could pursue research on ibogaine, for example. We are beginning to receive applications from researchers, VA researchers on MDMA and psilocybin in particular, but could certainly pursue it with ibogaine. It couldn't be administered clinically in VA unless it's FDA approved. So
FDA,
yeah.
it's all hanging on FDA, right? All of it.
And
That's correct, yes? I need to hear you say it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
What you're witnessing is, I think the term of art is frustration.
Yes.
Part of the problem. So FDA, got that initials. Hey, Mama Lee, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much for.
Hey, let me introduce you. This is Debbie Lee. Her son, Mark Lee, was the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq. She goes by Mama Lee because she is the surrogate mother to, I don't know how many Navy SEALs. And she has shepherded us through some very, very dark moments. And so I'd like, the chair will now recognize Mama Lee for 5 minutes for your comments.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And, you know, first I want to say thank you to each one of you who served. I never, never, never take for granted who pays that price for me to be able to enjoy the freedoms I enjoy each and every day. As Derek said, my son, Mark Lee, was the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, August 2nd, 2006. And he stood up in the direct line of fire 3 times just that day, willingly gave his life to save his teammates. And his final words were on me. And you guys that served, you know what he was saying. He was saying, I got the lead on this. We got a bigger mission upstairs to do. I can't do it alone. Follow me. And not even realizing it, but that was the stand that I took when I lost my son, was to stand up and say, okay, we're going to make sure our veterans are taken care of. We're going to make sure our troops serving are taken care of, our other Gold Star families that are taken care of. And so I made that choice to put on his boots and pick up his weapon and stay in the fight for every one of you who served. So thank you so much, and God bless you. I also understand, do I need to pause for a minute?
No, you're okay, but we're gonna do the 5-minute increments here, Mama.
Okay.
So
So I understand why you guys want to try anything and everything to get rid of the pain. I really do, but there's so much out there that's just masking the symptoms. It's not healing you guys. And we want to be able to do those things that are healing you so we don't have to continue to mask the symptoms over and over and over. We were the first military charity 11 years ago to start paying for hyperbaric oxygen therapy for our veterans. We wanted to have those therapies that did provide that healing. So much of the blast wave exposure is the frontal lobe of the brain. That's what controls the emotions. That's what controls the sleep or lack thereof. That's what also controls the memory. And I'll tell you what, if I have 3 or 4 hours of sleep a couple nights in a row, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. I would be so distracted and be saying, what did I just say? What's going on? And so I get it. Sleep is so important to our veterans to be able to maintain. But we have found the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We've had over 450 veterans who have gone through our year-long healing program, which includes 40 to 60 hyperbaric oxygen therapy dives, a year of hormone and supplement therapy. We also work with Mighty Oaks and refer our veterans to their retreat. They cover the retreat. We cover the cost of them to get there. But there's so much that is involved in the healing. And so that's one of the reasons that we've taken the lead on that. We have amazing testimony after testimony of veterans. We had one of our veterans who was on 53 prescription drugs that he was taking twice a day. And again, someone mentioned malpractice before, and I think that comes to that level because what's happening is one of the drugs is just taking care of the symptom from the other drug, and it's just this vicious cycle. I had happened to call him and just had a hunch that he wasn't doing well, and he said, yeah, I'm struggling, I'm suicidal. And once I went through and evaluated, was that something that's immediate or you just don't want to live? Because a lot of us struggle and we have those days that we feel like we can't take another day, but that doesn't mean that we have a plan. He communicated to me that he did not have a plan. So then I de-escalated that threat level there. We spoke for about an hour and a half, got him committed to applying for our program and getting that process started. He did go through the program. He is now on 3 prescription drugs a day from 53. So a huge difference there, and loves life, loves living. About 2 years ago, after he went through the program, I asked him to write down his testimonial of what happened. And I had no clue that when I spoke with him, he actually had a plan. He didn't communicate that to me. That night after he left work, he was going to go out in his truck, wait till everybody left, and was going to take his life so they wouldn't fight until the next morning. We have story after story after story.
Hey, Mama.
Yes.
Mama Lee. Just in the interest of getting through everybody here, can you say that potentially it would be advantageous if we change the way we speak about things? So what we're talking about is a air quotations non-evidence-based treatment modality, but the evidence is the living service member. So can we just like maybe throw that phrase out the window with the evidence-based thing? I mean, to me, the evidence is
the evidence is there. There's been research study after study after study proving that it works. Right. I think one of the things that we hear often with the HBOT is that it's off-label. It's not approved by the FDA.
Right.
For TBI, there are no drugs approved by the FDA for TBI. There's only 2 drugs that are approved for PTSD, and yet they continue to use those. They continue to prescribe those when they're off-label. The evidence is there. This is an evidence-based treatment that's out there. We have done SPECT scan after SPECT scan. We have pictures of the brain before and after. We can show you those studies. We can show you those results that have saved our lives. My husband.
And Mama.
Yes.
Mama, what we're going to do is we're going to take all that for the record. And I need to move on to General Bergman here, and he's going to introduce his witness. There's Chad Robichaud. He just showed up. That stuff. So thank you, Mama Lee. I appreciate this greatly. The chair now recognizes General Bergman to introduce his witness.
Well, Juliana Mercer, I'll just say she's been there, done that, and has got as many stories as some of you have gone through it. Juliana, over to you.
Thank you, General, and Semper Fi to all the Marines here in the room. I think it's important to point out that veterans are more likely to be open to holistic therapies than their civilian counterparts. I think that's a testament to those of us that are here in this room that have been trying to find different solutions, the outside of the box solutions for our veterans. I think that I know that the suicide rate would be much higher if many of us that are in the room haven't been working so hard to find and connect veterans to all these different types of therapies, whether it's medical, whether it's faith-based, whether it's psychedelics, whether it's community engagement, all of the things that we've been doing have been doing, but we need to do more. When I was at the Wounded Warrior Battalion between 2006 and 2010, we started introducing our veterans to holistic therapies. I personally had no idea what meditation or yoga was. I also was introduced to puppy therapy and surf therapy. All of these different things are helpful, and they're keeping us, I think, they're keeping that needle from going even further in the wrong direction. But even though I had all of those tools, even though I knew exactly what to do, I knew to reach out for help, I found myself in a place where I called it the black hole, and that's what I was trying to keep my fellow veterans from going into. Found myself in that black hole and knew that I needed help. I started talk therapy and it helped. It didn't help me get to the root cause of my problems. That's where psychedelic assisted therapy came in. I also had to leave the country to access this therapy. And thankfully, I was able to find relief of almost 20 years of collected trauma and grief. And I knew the next morning that this was what I needed to get for my veteran brothers and sisters. And I've been advocating ever since. I think it's really important to point out that we need more public-private partnerships. We need to work with the VA. We need to work with the nonprofits that are out there doing this. They're the boots on the ground. They're the ones that are working so closely with the veterans and being able to fund more public-private partnerships to get more of these things for our veterans. And also those anecdotal stories we're hearing right now, those are the things that we need to be able to have platforms to work with our congressional leaders and with our VA leaders, because you all hold the keys to the funding. And I think our folks at the VA really do care. We need to enable them to be able to do more research, to hear more about the things that are going on in the communities and give them the tools that they need in order to support my fellow brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer. I feel like this needs to be said because the VA is this amazing machine, but it's also the dartboard that all the darts get thrown at, right? The VA is held by standards that we as veterans in the community have created, laws and regulations that you have to abide by. And I can only imagine everything that walks through into your office every single day is like, here, this is the cure. This is the fix. You implement this in the VA and you will have no more problems. That has to happen. Happens in our office every day. Because the VA is regulated by the FDA and FDA approval, and we're talking about psychedelic therapies, we're talking holistic therapies with HBOT, and I'm making the assumption that the VA is very welcoming on the ideas and downstream, if the FDA starts to prove it, you will engage. Is the VA stance, it's right now, hey, VSOs are doing a good job at helping our veterans because we can't touch it? Or is it the VA is trying to maneuver in a way that you want to onboard it? That's a complicated question. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Could you say it again so I understand?
Man, I was on the flow. So the complicated part is.
Even bag of stuff is right on their front door.
Yeah, but you are bound by a regulation that you can't bring psychedelic therapies, HBOT, inside the VA, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Cannot.
Yes.
And while we are trying to move in a direction so the VA has that capabilities, it's put off onto these VSOs and these nonprofits. Yeah. Is there anything the VA can do differently to onboard these things, or is the bottom line, I need to know this, or is the bottom line is like, hey, we can't move a muscle until the FDA gives us green light?
As you know, Congressman, and I think you do as well, Representative Van Orden, and others here, VA investigators are conducting a number of studies of MDMA and assisted intense psychotherapy, as well as psilocybin. I think it's a combination of about 13 VA medical centers, not funded by VA, funded by private philanthropy. but they had to get approval from FDA and the DEA in order to be able to use the information clinically. It is not a rapid process, but it can be done. And in fact, our colleague from the Bronx, Dr. Yehuda, who I know that you know, just got another philanthropic donation to be able to enroll more veterans in the studies so that we can do that.
The FDA take the VA's studies on MDMA?
Without question. I've had conversations with.
How far away are we from that result to give to the FDA for readdressing the MDA approval?
I could get back to you on that, sir. You know, some of this is about numbers. I deeply respect the experiences that have been shared here, and Juliana, I can just say thank God you're here. But at the same time, practicing care that way does not necessarily work and can sometimes be risky. So there is power in having a number of stories with consistent assessments of how that goes. But we will do our best and get back to you in terms of what a timeline might look like. What I don't know is how fast FDA will or may reconsider the recent decision that Congresswoman Miller Meeks expressed disappointment in.
Thank you, Doctor. And Ms. Mercer, your evidence, like you are evidence. Let's never forget this.
Absolutely.
And a faceless bureaucrat at the FDA, which I would love to have them here, and I want them to look you in the face and say you're not evidence, because that ain't happening.
They said the risk outweighs the benefits.
Correct.
That's what the FDA said.
Yeah.
The risk is death.
Yeah, I get it. I'd like to recognize my very good friend, Mr. Davis from North Carolina, for a couple comments if you'd like, and then we're gonna move on to Mr. Olson from PESI immediately following that.
Well, good morning to everyone, and first and foremost, thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for extending the kind invite for me to come join you at this roundtable. Thank you to all of our veterans who served, who continue to serve other veterans as well today. We're fighting tirelessly for our families. As a Air Force veteran, I know firsthand the challenges that men and women who've worn the uniform are facing. And I would like to say from my time serving in the state Senate to now in the Congress, it's been really important to me to continue to advocate and look for ways to deal with PTSD, TBI, and so forth. I've worked with years now, Dr. Murphy, as a member of the Veterans Committee. We've worked particularly with HBOT, and from all that I can tell, we know some are getting results. So it's kind of a follow-up question to what was asked. I'm working with Representative Murphy again here in Congress now in HR 3649, Veterans National Traumatic Brain Injury Treatment Act. And what we're looking at here in particular, talking about some sort of pilot program. And in the context of, I mean, really a follow-up question here, how can you just open the door, and what in the world of the research you're doing, FDA, are we able to do in terms of, we're just trying to figure this out, how to open this door in terms of, you know, could a pilot, some sort of pilot help in any capacity?
Before turning to my colleagues, I will just note that we had a pilot going for a while under the umbrella of compassionate innovation, right? It's horrible to be able to say to a veteran, I know that our treatments haven't helped you, but that's it. You know, that's the end of the medicine chest, metaphorically. And so we had a pilot going for, I want to say, a year and a half. We couldn't get enough veterans to enroll. In part because their current thinking at that time was that you would need treatments for a good 5 or 6 weeks, 3 times a week. Now, we could help them with housing. The treatment was paid for and so forth, but you're uprooting yourself in some instances from your home environment. And of course, there's the issue of like work and paying rent and so forth. So notwithstanding some very enthusiastic efforts, we finally had to bring it to a close. But yes, that is one kind of approach that we could take for sure.
And follow up, what type of efforts are underway then to help us navigate the challenges of participation in ballot?
Well, we exerted a lot of efforts at that time. We are not currently funding any of those pilots. We are funding a lot of research, and at this point efforts and partnerships, as you referenced, focused a lot on moving upstream. How do we find people earlier in their course, hopefully before, if I use your words, arriving at a black hole where no other options seem remotely tenable. And so we're partnering with many veteran service organizations. About 20% of the awardees are faith-based or cultural organizations, all kinds of organizations, to see how many veterans we can reach. Because as Congressman Luttrell said, there is no one solution for every veteran. Veterans are different background and context. Do you want to add?
Mr. Davis, can I say something? Are you referring to the monies that are expended through the Staff Sergeant Fox grant program?
Yes.
I have to correct you publicly, ma'am. We went through every single, because I asked that guy, and it bordered on perjury when he gave me that answer. He was under oath. We went through every program that is granted money through the Staff Sergeant Fox program, and you are grossly overstating the amount of monies that are going to that thing. So we need to recalibrate ourselves. And I understand dartboard and all that stuff. That accurate is not factually accurate. So we're saying the veterans, the VA is given all of this money, and you're given 19% is the actual number that he gave me, if that's correct in testimony. That's either he knew that was wrong, that means he lied, or he didn't know that was wrong, which means he doesn't deserve to be in that position. So we're just gonna say that that's not true, and I'll give you every single piece of information that proves what you're saying is wrong. And I get that someone, gave you that stat, but that's just wrong. And then the other thing is this, that the solution to your problem is in the transition assistance program. That's the upstream solution, and I'm personally responsible for that because I'm the chairman of that subcommittee, which means if that's not happening, that is my personal failure. And I'll publicly acknowledge that also. The chair now recognizes Conor McGregor for 5 minutes. Oh, sorry. Look at you. It's good to see you. You kidding me? Hey, so Chad was a MARSOC Marine. I got to brag on this guy for a little bit. It's over at a tier 1 unit. Didn't turn out well because of all your experiences, the burdens of war. You're going to off yourself in your closet, and your wife got you out of there. And then he became an MMA fighter. 8-0, right? 18-2. Okay. Well, I wasn't one of those two that beat you. So, and then he started this organization called the Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation. And full disclosure, I used to do some stuff for him, not compensated financially. Of course, that was part of my kingdom work, but he's a distinguished gentleman. Mr. Robichaud is recognized for 5 minutes. Please tell us your story, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for participating in this. This is nothing is more important to me personally than in our country than take care of our warriors and preserve our freedoms through caring for our warriors' future endeavors. I am the founder of Mighty Oaks Foundation, and we do specifically resiliency and recovery programs through non-clinical faith-based modalities. We've served now over 500,000 active duty service members since 2011 on bases around the world by request of commands to come and provide spiritual resiliency and the 4 pillars of resiliency programs. Since in the last 10 years, I've spoken at both Marine Corps Boot Camp West and on the East Coast. And I speak to pretty much about 75% of the recruits that come through the Marine Corps recruit training on spiritual resiliency. And as a demand and request by the commanders, because the commanders on the ground actually believe that faith-based solutions and faith-based resiliency is a solution to PTSD and combat veteran suicide. In addition, we've written several books. We've given away over 300,000 copies of our books to active duty service members. On the back end, we have recovery programs, and we run these programs at 8 different ranches around the country. We do about $8 million in programming, and it's all for free to the active duty service members, veterans, and first responders as well, including their spouses. These programs are 6-day intensives followed on by ongoing aftercare. And one of the things that I want to point out that's very significant is that all 4 branches send active duty service members on PTAD orders, permissive temporary assignment duty orders, to us because they believe and care about our programs, including, as she mentioned, the Wounded Warrior Battalion Marine Corps has always utilized us as a resource for when their active duty clinical programs are failing for these service members. We have served over 6,000 veterans and service members through that program with some incredible results that I'll read off some of the statistics before I finish today. Mighty Oaks program didn't start as me as the founder. It started as Congressman Orden mentioned, as me coming home and falling on my face. I did 14 years in the special operations community. I was a Force Recon Marine and had the privilege to serve on our JSOC task force at one of our premier Tier 1 units. During my 8 deployments to Afghanistan, I lost 15 friends. I had my home blown up by a vehicle, improvised explosive device, and I was abducted by a foreign intelligence agency. In the result of that, me coming home and being diagnosed with severe chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, that led me into a downward spiral that almost cost me everything, including my family and including my life. I reached a point to realize the damage I was causing around me was so catastrophic that the people around me would maybe be sad without me, but they would be better off. And unfortunately, that same hopeless thought finds a home in the hearts of over 20 veterans every single day. And we know through Congressman Ben Orden's testimony before that who knows what that number is, because the 17 a day does not include jumps, car crashes, and medical medicine overdoses, which is a huge contributing factor. So the number doesn't matter if it's 17, 22, 50. If it's 1, it's too many, and that's why we're here today. For me, going through all those programs, the reason I started Mighty Oaks is because I felt that I had no solution to the problems I was dealing with. I had went through clinical programs outside the VA, inside the VA. I had financial success. I had rebounded personally through my athletic career. I had rebuilt my ego and everything that I thought I lost from my personality, but I was still dealing with these problems. And it wasn't until I met a mentor in my local community that introduced me to a relationship with Jesus and helped me live the life I was created to live, that helped me bring my life back together. And what that might sound hyper spiritual to some people, what that meant for me was that his mentorship and discipleship of me gave me a blueprint to make better choices. And the realization I came through about a year of mentorship through this man was that all the things I had dealt with, the anxiety, the depression, I was still dealing with these things. But the result was I was making poor choices previously. And now the Bible gave me a blueprint to make better choices. And so when I took responsibility for my life and I started making better choices, the result was different. I found restoration in my life. I found hope again. And I found a renewed purpose. And that purpose is why I'm sitting here today, to stand up and fight for my brothers and sisters that are dealing with the same thing and bring to them the same solution that I found. I agree with everyone here that there's no one size fits all. But this isn't this hearing and these roundtables, this is not an either or. It's not either psychedelics or either FDA approved pharmaceuticals or either faith-based. It's not an either or, it's an and. And if anybody gets the right to choose what kind of care they should get, it's our veterans. And to have faith-based programs taking off the table is a contributing factor that the Veterans Administration, to me, is responsible for in the epidemic of suicide. And I will say, and I know this probably won't be agreed with by right here, I will say the VA has refused to allow faith-based programs. I know you mentioned some funding earlier, but the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnership Programs, the way it works is it doesn't partner with programs like Mighty Oaks Foundation and offer those those spiritual solutions and faith-based peer-to-peer solutions to the veterans. What it does is the Center for Faith-Based Programs in the VA wants to partner with our program so we could propagate clinical programs to the people that we have the reach to. And that's the way the organization is set up.
Chad, let me ask you 2 questions. How many folks have gone through your program where the guys go to a camp and they come back in aftercare and all that stuff?
6,000.
How many have committed suicide?
3.
Okay.
And this is a high risk, very high risk. individuals.
You've had 6,000 exceptionally high-risk individuals go through your program, and 3 have committed suicide.
That's correct.
That's correct. How much money do you get from the federal government?
$0. I spend.
It's quiet in this room for a reason.
I spoke 87 times last year to raise $8 million I personally spoke at 87 events to raise $8 million to put this program together.
I want everybody to just take a knee and hydrate on that. Okay, and 2 of those guys, if I remember correctly, they should have been admitted to the military. It was we need people to go to Iraq and fight, right?
Yeah.
They waived mental health standards for these guys, 2 of them. So essentially,
bipolar. 2 of those guys are bipolar.
Right. So essentially, out of 6,000 folks that have gone there, 1 who, well, it doesn't matter. They're all dead. It's bad. Yeah. Anyway, but you get it. Okay. Thanks for that. Mr. Olson, let me tell you about this cat. He runs his company. He's like right down the road, and didn't know it because they're very under the radar. And you work very successfully with the Veterans Affairs Administration. And honest to goodness, I know you always get beat up. That's why I'm so thankful you came here. We truly have no idea how many veterans' lives you have saved, and we're very thankful for that. I just want you to know that. And how Mr. Olson complements your mission, I think it's incredibly important, and it's imperative that you guys still maintain this relationship. So Mr. Olson, will you speak to us about 5 minutes, please?
Certainly. Honored to be here. Thank you for the conversation. And thank you for those of you who have sacrificed and served. I'm the son of a Vietnam veteran and a retired laborer in Wisconsin who thinks I've never done a day of work in my life. He's probably right. But he's never been too interested in my work until I told him I was coming here to talk about these issues. And he couldn't be more proud. So thank you for the opportunity. This mission is close to my heart as a son of a Vietnam vet. Also, mental health services saved my life when I was 21 years old. And it's close to the hearts of our 230 associates at PESI who care greatly about this issue as well. We're the largest provider of continuing education to mental health professionals in the world. Last year alone, we trained over 300,000 people in the United States on clinical mental health issues. We have offices in the UK, Italy, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. And we trained people in 151 different countries last year. We're very happy to have provided education to over 10,000 people, therapists in the VA over the last many years. So thank you for that partnership, and it's great to be able to serve you in that way. We've been honored to work alongside some of the leading experts in the field of psychotherapy. Congressman Williams mentioned The Body Keeps a Score by Bessel van der Kolk, who is someone who does a tremendous amount of work for us and has really changed the face of psychotherapy. That's what I can speak to, is psychotherapy and what we see as a provider of education. As I was preparing for today, I reviewed the list of evidence-based approaches that are listed on the VA website, all of them empirically validated. But we know it can often take a long time for the evidence to come in to be able to say that something is empirically validated. What I find curious in looking at that list, and it's similar to what happens in the United Kingdom with NHS and their desire to have evidence-based services, is that that list of approaches doesn't resemble what I see from therapists in the field and the demands that they have for education regarding trauma. There are a few of those, EMDR, EBT, CBT, those we see in demand. But many of the approaches listed on the VA website, we don't offer as educational opportunities simply because therapists who are practicing in the field, working with PTSD and trauma and suicide, aren't seeking those approaches. Bessel's book, which has been probably the best-selling nonfiction book over the last 10 years, talks about the basis for trauma in the body. And he talks extensively about body-based and holistic approaches used to cure and treat PTSD. And our therapists are demanding that type of education. The therapists who are in the field, who are seeing the impact that this is having. I'm not a researcher. We work with clinicians, but from graduate school till today, the piece of research that always spoke the most to me was the best determinant of treatment outcomes for somebody with mental health issues is not the approach that they use, nor is the education that they have. It's the relationship that they have with the client. That hasn't changed. And I would encourage the VA to really encourage their clinicians to explore these other therapies, IFS, psychedelics, body-based somatic approaches that clinicians say are having a huge impact. Those tools in their toolbox, along with cognitive-based approaches that are empirically valid, I believe can give that variety of approaches that can really meet a client where they're at. Because one thing that's been very common here is we need to be able to individualize treatment. And if we keep data on that, that truly is evidence-based approaches to therapy. So I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate everyone here. Thank you.
I mean, what I'm hearing is, in order for something to be evidence-based, I mean, nothing starts off evidence-based. And then you try these different treatment modalities with psychedelics or faith-based stuff, and then you record that data, and that data becomes evidence. And then the evidence is reviewed by somebody else who's like, they check your math, and then it becomes evidence-based treatment, correct?
That's the story of how the field progressed.
But it takes the point that he's making, and that these young ladies over here know, is that we can start a study right now and it will not be evidence-based replicated in 10 years. And then it will be given to the VA. Research is so methodical when you're touching a human being.
Yeah, but you got to ask yourself why, Morgan? Why?
Because we don't want to kill anybody.
Well, we don't want to kill anybody, obviously, but also is there institutional inertia that is fighting against this? Because
if they touch something and it kills veterans, and they have not done longitudinal studies or replicated longitudinal studies, they're going to be sitting in front of us and we're going to hang them from the ceiling. That's the challenge. That's where the VSOs come in.
Yeah, but so you're missing what I'm saying, sir.
Obviously.
So I'm a free fall jump master. It was one of the hardest schools I ever went to because they used to do this. It was called protecting the badge. And they made that school so hard to get through that they finally got reamed by the DOD because their attrition rate was so high and it didn't need to be. My point is, Mr. Luttrell, that somewhere in here, somebody's protecting the badge at the expense of the veteran, because it's statistically impossible if we spend $120 billion and have some of the smartest people in the world here and it's not happening. Taste the soup. That's all I'm saying, dude. We got to remove the personality. We got to remove the institution. We have to look at the veteran. And if this works, it works. If this works, it works. And if it's taken this long, Morgan, something's there. I don't want to use the word nefarious.
This is a long rabbit hole.
Okay, check Raj. Very well. Okay. Mr. Murray, will you please tell us what's going on from your perspective, sir?
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Thank you very much, Chairman Van Orden, Congressman Luttrell Davis. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share my story. For background, on September 4th, 2006, my platoon was returning to base on the west side of Fallujah, and my Humvee drove over an IED. Thankfully, everybody survived, but my right leg was shattered and resulted in an amputation above the knee. Since that surgery, I've had phantom sensations where my leg used to be every single day. Most times they're innocuous, like a tingle or an itch, but occasionally they're painful and debilitating. And there used to be nothing I could do about that. Doctors aren't exactly sure why phantom pain exists, and there's no simple, easy button to fix it. I've tried traditional pain relief like Tylenol, ibuprofen, or narcotics. I've tried muscle relaxers, tried nerve blocking medication like lidocaine, other medications that have primary uses for anti-seizure and secondary nerve blocking effects. None of them worked. Ultimately, when the occasional painful episode would arise, I was left to just try to go to sleep, and hopefully when I woke up, it was gone. That's until my wife put me onto a THC balm that you rub onto the affected area. It looks like a deodorant stick. It's a combination of coconut oil, peppermint, and THC. And it was the first substance that offered any kind of relief, dulling the pain almost immediately and completely eliminating it in about 20, 30 minutes. To be clear, even though this balm has THC, it does not produce a psychoactive or intoxicating effect through local applications, meaning I can't get high from rubbing that lotion on my leg. But due to prohibitions on THC and the stigma associated with it, this life-changing substance is not available through DOD or VA, where I got my other treatments for my prosthetics or PTSD. I know this specific meeting has a focus on alternate PTSD treatments, not necessarily physical or nerve pain problems, but in my case, I believe the two are interconnected. I'm rated at VA for PTSD, and I have been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. By and large, it's well managed, and I haven't had an anxiety attack in a few years. That doesn't mean it's gone away. It means I manage it with various therapies. But physical pain and difficulty with my leg can absolutely exacerbate these feelings. And having the ability to treat unseen pain can provide immediate relief, both physically and mentally. Hopefully the days are gone where my remedy for nerve pain is try to sleep it off. And it won't ruin a whole day for me anymore. This is a huge burden taken off of me, and I want more of that for others. I'm incredibly lucky not only been introduced to this, but also have the opportunity to speak with people who can affect change for many others just like me. My ask today is collectively for all of us to shove government towards the right thing to do. I know that, phantom pain may not fall into any traditional bucket. It's kind of a unique problem, but hopefully my story can illustrate some of the potential positives that are available, just not to patients at VA or DOD yet. The VFW supports research and studies into all alternative therapies, whether they're cannabis, MDMA, psilocybin, ketamine, stellate ganglion block, hyperbaric oxygen, and other plant-based therapies like ibogaine and ayahuasca that may help combat the causes and effects of various mental health challenges. It's time to look at non-traditional treatments for some of these ailments. VA has been a leader in other treatments in the past, such as telehealth, cardiovascular care, and prosthetics. Ms. Luttrell mentioned, VA can be a leader in this. They have unprecedented resources and a population that is very willing to engage in holistic treatments and alternate therapies. I understand the bureaucracy is not going to just on their own begin studying things without the people and money to do so. They're not going to take it upon themselves. All the great work that VA does, they're not going to go home and say, I got free time, let's study this. Our ask is to shove resources and authorization their way. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you for that. And thank you for literally giving your flesh to this country for freedom, dude. It's a real thing. I'd like to recognize Mr. D.G. Rolomo. Is that right? Okay, that sounds good too.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. Take about 5 minutes to tell us your story, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would just have to say this is a very humbling experience, being around so many veterans that have served our country valiantly. I'm a veteran and fortunate enough to have never deployed, never been in the line of fire. But as a result, I felt compelled to support the warfighter. And 10 years ago, I was invited to a Hyperbaric International Conference, and it would sound like an echo chamber if I repeated everything I've learned since then when it comes to what Debbie Lee had to say. It's hundreds of veterans that I've seen get hyperbaric oxygen, and I've spent 10 years reading the research, and that's coming from a structural engineer's perspective. I'll tell you that you can read the research if you spend enough time in it. You can find good research and bad research. There's over 5,300 studies that are on PubMed. They're published, on hyperbaric oxygen, which you'll find is safe and effective. There's over, I think it's nearing 1 million studies on the root cause of what you'll find TBIs, and likely the reason all of us will die one day in this room is either caused or worsened, facilitated by inflammation. Inflammation is the root cause of so much of the disease that we face in this world that is caused either by chemicals, by blasts, by stress. Inflammation is the root cause. And you'll find that there's a cascade that goes down from there. At the very bottom, if that were looked at like a pyramid, you'd find at the bottom of that pyramid, there might be 1,000 symptoms. And so in my experience with the hundreds of veterans that we treated that came in because of PTSD, they came in with a list of ailments. It's not just the PTSD. You'll find, number one, there's clearly a brain-gut connection. Then that has a lot to do with the autoimmune issues that people deal with because their immune system has been compromised. Inflammation, is behind a lot of this, or I would say all of it. If you look at the science, you'll find that inflammation, in fact, has a cure. I would say temporary, at least permanent at best, and that is hyperbaric oxygen. It's been proven, the science is there. When you get a hyperbaric oxygen treatment under the right protocol, it regulates 8,101 of your genes. Your inflammatory genes are downregulated, your anti-inflammatory genes are upregulated, and your reparative and regenerative genes are upregulated. With 20 of those treatments, it's been shown to increase your stem cell available in your body by 800%. So you have reparative and regenerative things going on in your body. So we find the veterans coming in with a list of 20 ailments, and PTSD likely at the top if they've been dealing with migraine headaches for years and years and can't be in crowds. It's one of the first things they notice goes away. And some of them dealing with that for 10 years will tell you that six months, a year and a half post-treatment, they've not come back. They've disappeared after 10 treatments. So I can't imagine, my wife gets migraines and I know she's debilitated with it. Can't imagine what it's like to live with that. I believe that the Mighty Oaks Foundation is probably the most powerful coping mechanism you could come across. If your faith is strong, and my faith is in Jesus as well, I think that is, you clearly have a leg up on coping with that and reducing the stress. Reducing the stress, which causes inflammation, is also a big part of that. So I think we're at the tip of the iceberg. Inflammation, according to PubMed, with its million, you just type in, do a search, type in inflammation, you're going to get close to 1 million hits. Nearly covers every single indication there is that's known. Inflammation is part of that. And so for us to take Debbie Lee's words, I would say that we are dealing with a lot of nonprofit organizations out there that are helping with the coping mechanisms, but we're not focused on the root cause. If we focus on the root cause, we're going to find that list of 20 elements those veterans come in with, I could fill this room with veterans will tell you every one of those elements has been checked off. It's not just what's going on up here, it's what's going on in the gut. And a lot of that is connected to, of course, the anti-inflammatory benefits that I mentioned. It is a powerful gene therapy. And
so how many folks, what's the patient population you're talking about here?
Patient population.
How many folks?
How many folks about what?
How many folks do you have direct knowledge of that have used HBOT?
This year, so we opened up the largest clinic in the US that's treating veterans. This year we'll have treated 300.
Okay.
All 40 rides?
While we're in the process, by the end of the year, we'll target about 300. Some of them do 20 and they feel cured.
Here's the kicker. And I did extensive research on HBOT when I was in grad school. Big deal. I know it don't look it. 40 rides, hour and 15 minutes plus or minus on both sides. Yeah.
85 minutes. Yeah.
here's the kicker when the VA is concerned. Okay, what does the end value look like when we're touching veterans with HBOT? How far can they travel? Because I live an hour and 15 minutes from the closest HBOT. Then I have to go in for the ride. I have to come down off the ride, go back to work, go back, drive back into town to do the second ride 40 times in a row. Okay, do the math on that. If we implement HBOT into the VA, not only then, I have to tell you this because this is dollar signs, right? We force money into the VA, but if we can't get every single veteran to do 40 straight rides, because that's where the science is, 40, unless we figure out some death time duration, what does that look like? I have no idea. And it's valid, it's valuable. I got it for those that can do the whole ride. And you say 10 rides, okay, but we pay for 40. Think about that. That's the sticking point. If I'm speaking out of turn, you can jump on me here. But that's where, because I've been working for this HBOT stuff for over 10 years, trying to figure out the best avenue to get this in front of every single veteran possible. And unless we ship a chamber to somewhere.
Okay, so Mark,
I'm not finished.
Go ahead.
Unless we ship a chamber, I mean, we go mobile on this thing. I mean, that's one thing, but I haven't had a conversation with too many veterans that have a livelihood, like they work, they have kids, that kind of thing, where they can do 40 rides in a row. So where are we? We don't have time to talk about that. I'll catch you after class. You're gonna get.
No, I'm just gonna say one thing. So I'm a special operations independent duty corpsman, and I'm certified to ride in chambers and to administer O2 therapy and all that stuff, mostly for diving accidents. And there are mobile chambers that you can literally ship to somebody, and you don't even need an inside tender.
Do you know how much?
Yeah, I get it.
You don't have any idea.
It's $18. I get it. It's what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be a hard facility. So let's just open up the minds here. Thank you for that. Hold on a second. Do you have something you want to say, sir? We're going to hit one more witness, then we're going to do a round. Is that all right? Okay. Hey, Shar, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. So that's Shar Cognac. Go to the guy next to you for a second.
Or don't.
Can you look at the guy next to you?
Oh, this guy.
Yeah. Okay, that's Robert Akoniak. Robert Akoniak and I were roommates in SEAL training about 1,000 years ago. And we deployed to combat together in Iraq. And Robert is one of the bravest human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And he's a fantastic guy. His wife, Shar, they've been married for 32 years now, something like that.
30?
30, okay. So if you go ahead, Shar, will you please tell us your story? And I'd really like you guys to listen to this because the reason I wanted to talk last, you tie everything together.
Well, thank you, Congressman Van Orden. I really appreciate y'all having me and taking the time to hear my testimony. I've been married to Robert, a retired Navy SEAL senior chief, for 30 years, and I've known him for 40. I was his girlfriend and buds and have been there from the beginning. Robert served both pre and post 9/11 for a total of 25 years and in conjunction with a few guys in this room today. After 9/11, he was gone for the better part of 10 years, and it's difficult to describe 33 years in several minutes. In the course of that time, Robert deployed multiple times to different areas of operations: Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, Southeast Asia. From the very beginning, I could identify changes in Robert when he came home, and I could progressively see him getting worse. He was aggressive, edgy, quick to react, difficult to get along with, incessantly argumentative, on the defense most of the time, and drinking a lot more than usual. He was being a typical young team guy, so we thought at that time. After an intense deployment in Afghanistan, Robert came home even worse. My son and I walked around on eggshells, not knowing what would set him off. He mentally checked out, and cognitively, there was something very off. At 44, he saw a SEAL team hormone specialist named Dr. Parsley, who said he had the hormone levels of a 91-year-old man due to the lack of sleep and stressors associated with combat. He was declining, but in SEAL fashion, kept up with a never-quit attitude and began hormone treatment through this doctor. He continued to deploy over the next several years. Robert, being a senior chief, was in such bad condition, he retired 1 year prior to his higher tenure. During the pre-retirement phase, a VA doctor asked my husband about all the documented explosions of combat, explosions in general, and how many times he was knocked out. My husband replied that he had never been knocked out, of which he received a 0% rating for traumatic brain injury. Mind you, he was a 60 gunner, breacher, and had been an explosives instructor prior to combat. I'm not sure if you guys have the brain scan of Robert, and this was taken a little less than 2 years post-retirement, and I'll discuss this in a little bit. Robert did receive 100% permanently and totally disabled veteran rating, and actually they rated him 220% disabled. Upon retiring in 2016, my husband resolved that this was his new normal for the rest of his life. He had multiple operations on his knees, shoulder, gained weight, had a loss of identity and purpose, was up all night trying to sleep during the day, explosive irrational behavior, severe dependency on alcohol, and I was slowly watching my husband give up while trying to keep our family together and keep our son knowing the dark truth of what was going on. The lack of support from the VA was astounding, and over-medicating him would create a bigger issue. We didn't need multiple medications to put a Band-Aid on the situation and not fix it. He did do a sleep study, and the VA provided him with a CPAP machine, which did help. At least he got some sleep. The love of his family and his faith in God helped us through this very difficult time. Through the community, I was friends with Debbie Lee, who you heard today of America's Mighty Warriors, and disclosed my desperation in helping my husband. In 2018, Robert was voluntold by Debbie Lee to fill out the application for a month-long program to do hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Robert attended a 30-day program in Florida, and his first awakening to the conditions he was living was a consultation after the brain scan you just saw with the world-renowned neurologist, Dr. Amen. At the consultation, the doctor apologized that he saw so many concussive impacts to the brain that he could not count them all. He identified Robert had no frontal cortex function, and all thought process was overcompensating in the back of his brain. He explained to us that the Swiss cheese of a brain led to him having anger issues and irrational thought. His brain was not processing properly, and you can see by the amount of damage sustained through multiple years of combat on his brain on the top photos of the brain X-ray. This was terrifying and also a relief to have the information to better explain the why. After the successful treatment, you can see the cleaning of the brain and the regeneration of neuroplasticity. This was the beginning of his healing process. Several months later, through another nonprofit, Time for a Hero, he was offered stem cell treatment overseas, which was a milestone in changing his life. He received stem cell treatment, of which he was injected with millions of adipose stem cells. Fast forward 8 to 9 months through reading comprehension and working, he demonstrated a significant improvement in his cognitive health and also his demeanor. Due to his successes, Robert was achieving using multiple modalities to heal. He was hired on at the Seal Future Foundation health director, building out a protocol and providing well-needed treatments that weren't being provided by the VA. His findings after talking to hundreds of SEALs was that these guys didn't want to be medicated and only wanted hope and some sense of themselves again, and they realized they weren't alone. Yet again, Robert sought another nonprofit program at the Navy SEAL Foundation, which he is currently an ambassador for in helping raising funds for their programs. The Navy SEAL Foundation Warrior Health Program facilitated a 4-week high-performance training program providing a nutritionist, chiropractor, strength coach, physical therapist, and group counseling, another modality that continued to help his healing. My husband didn't fight and resist going to war, but he has to fight constantly for care and rights with his VA benefits. These different modalities and emerging therapies have been instrumental, and my husband's life fundamentally changed for the better. His service dog, Addison, also has a tremendous impact in helping him with his PTSD. He kept intact his family, and our love and support has gotten him through the hardest of times. Robert's currently excelling in college with a 3.8 GPA and plans on getting his master's in business and psychology at the USC School of Business next year. He would have not been able to accomplish this if it weren't for the generosity of the nonprofits and his will to get his life back. The fight continues, and the post-combat demons still exist. These special veterans who were willing to die for their country need expanded VA programs and modalities that look at the individual, and I implore you to considering offering authorization and the programs that my husband and others have had proven success with. Thank you.
Will you back the camera up?
I certainly will.
Ladies, that's all the evidence I wanted to show you. It's Shar and Robert. And again, I appreciate everything you're doing, but that's the evidence right there. That is evidence-based treatment. Thank you. It's great to see you guys.
Thank you.
Sir, you had something you want to say?
Yes, sir. First, let me say thank God for this opportunity being here today. Thank you, Representative Van Orden and the others, distinguished guests. Sean Deadweiler is our president for Black Veterans Empowerment Council. He had to leave for a prior engagement that was already scheduled for today. I am Sean Carrington, Chief of Staff of Black Veterans Empowerment Council. The two areas I would like to focus in on today's discussion is our two top priorities, which is homelessness. We think that contributes directly to what we see within our communities when it comes to suicides, and also faith-based therapies. I too lean everything on Jesus Christ. And I think what I've seen throughout my journey, I served 24 years in the United States Army, serving my fellow veterans, serving not just my family. I raised 3 boys, 4 girls. That's why I lost all my hair. But I think one of the things that I've noticed even throughout my journey is that if our start line is not correct, everything I do thereafter will be off base. And I think with our veteran communities, our solutions and our problems sometimes are internal. I also agree that it's not one size fits all. I understand we have many problems and many solutions within our communities. But I think internally, that's a key area for our veteran communities. I think if I recognize within everything or every aspect of my life, how do I see things, I can change things. And I saw that myself. I see that in the communities that I serve, and I see that within our veteran community. So we support that. We work and travel to many nonprofit organizations and talk that very message. How are we serving our veterans? How are we helping them become whole? How are we stopping the issues of depending on external factors and elements and leaning more on internal things? How do they see things? If I just change the behavior without changing their spirit, I'm kind of just on the treadmill, running down the same path, leading to the same things. Definition of insanity, which we talked about at the opening statement. I think that's what we see. That's what we're leaning on, and that's what a key solution for our organization is, to really lean in on faith-based therapies. And we would like to work with the VA on that very topic and other organizations because I think that's a key element to our veteran community. I thank you.
You notice that other members had to peel off because we have all these other commitments that in no way, shape, or form does that reflect on their willingness to change this. So I want to thank everybody for coming. So Rob and Shar and Debbie, thanks for tuning in. I want to thank everybody from every one of these individual fields that have different disciplines. And if you guys have any closing comments, we're going to go around. What, Retzer or Riser? Okay, I'm sorry. I have a friend that was no longer with us. His name is Riser. Does anybody have any closing comments that they want to go through from your individual disciplines, just to kind of close the loop? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say thank you again, Representative Van Orden, for organizing this today, and appreciate you inviting Student Veterans America. Our priority is peer support. I myself was a student veteran and didn't identify as a veteran when I came on campus. And as soon as I saw an SVA chapter that had other women veterans there, I became initially engaged. And then I started labeling myself as a veteran. And we know peer support is the most important thing as far as graduation rates. So having and supporting programs that VA has, like VA Vital and the peer support system, is what we recommend today. Thank you.
And that's why I'm such an advocate for these cats, Mr. Murray and everybody from our veteran service organizations. Okay, well, I think this was very productive. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think something that we missed talking about is the prohibition and the barriers to research. The $10 million that went to the DoD that Mr. Luttrell was able to get for research, it's going to take 1.2 million of that for a DEA license to study. Same with the VA. So our agencies, I mean, it's a government agency. So those barriers to research, are there ways that we can get rid of those to ease and to speed up the process? Because that DEA license takes, how long is it? A year and millions of dollars. And our agency, that question needs to be, I think, discussed.
That's what we were referring to. We're doing something wrong. It's not impugning anybody's reputation or anybody's intent. But what I have found I get all my care through the VA. And the people that clean the facility that I'm in and check me in, and my doctors that I see there are they're the bomb. You know what I mean? I love them. I got these great glasses there. But the closer you get to DC, the more dysfunctional it becomes. And Morgan saying we're going to hang people from the roof? Nope. A dude come up here, gave $16 million worth of bonuses, said he forgot to open a tab on an email. Oops. And they all happen to be SCSs still around. So that's not the case. We can't fire anybody around here, and it's junk. What we can do is very thoughtful regulatory reform. And I think that's the biggest thing. So just for you guys who want to look at those scans, are very interesting. I've seen them already because I've known Rob forever, but those will be entered into the record. You can actually see a brain being healed through HBOT. That's evidence. Yes, Mr. Robichaud.
Thank you. I've heard a lot about the faith-based programs, and I'll say, from my perspective, the VA does, on the physical side, the VA has done an incredible job with like TBI, prosthetics, things like that, the burn clinics. So why do you guys still come under such fire on the PTSD side? And so I personally believe that you can heal someone's body and you can heal someone's mind, but unless you heal someone's soul, they're never truly going to be well. And the only thing that's going to heal someone's soul is faith-based programs. And I believe, this is my personal perspective, that PTSD and combat trauma is a spiritual wound. And a spiritual wound requires a spiritual solution. And so that has to be on a table. We did a third-party independent doctoral study from Mighty Oaks, and it was done by, so we talk about evidence-based, it was done by the Southern Baptist Theology Seminary, which we have no relationship. They asked us to do this independent study on us. And it was conducted over several years. 71% responded positively to the care. 51% responded positively to a clinical significant. So based on the clinical model, that was clinically significant care. And 30% responded in a positive way with remission level scores, according to the PCL-5 survey on PTSD symptoms. Those numbers drastically outperform clinical programs, by the way. I'm sure you guys know that. And we did an exit poll with all the participants that said that 80% of the veterans that participated in a study said that they had identified the most effective part of that study was that it was done outside of a clinical environment. I'm certainly not saying that we need to get rid of clinical programs, but what I'm saying is that treating the symptoms of PTSD with medication is not the solution. It hasn't worked. So in the last however long we've been trying to do this since Vietnam, and it's not going to work now. And so you can pump as much money as you want to in the clinical programs, and it's not going to be a solution. So the question keeps coming up: is whether the FDA approved this? That's the wrong question. The question should be, what can you do outside of the FDA? The FDA is not the governing body for, it should not be governing the Veterans Administration, in my opinion. They can be part of the solution, but they are not the solution. And I really urge you guys to, as you go back from here, to consider that. And I thank you and all the other congressional representatives that put this together.
The FDA, they're not a substitute for you. And our intent is to give you every single tool you can possibly have to leverage. And your hands are being tied by bureaucrats because they may or may not want to do something. And that's unacceptable on all levels. So just to wrap this thing up, that is the intent, ladies, doctors and whatnot, is to make sure that Mr. Olson can provide every single bit of continuing education training based on any treatment modality that works. That Chad, Sean, and Edward or Ed, they can provide these spiritual services, and they can be either administered or overseen by you guys or funded by you guys in a real way, not that 19%, because that is not true. And we want to make sure that we can do psychedelic training or treatment if that works, and we get to our student veterans the upstream solution that before she becomes a veteran, she's talked to by us through the TAP program, that our Marines have everything that they need to make sure that they don't wind up homeless to begin with. And if we can keep pushing this needle, I get it, we're pushing a noodle up the hill, you know, but if everybody's intents are pure and everybody takes off their jerseys and doesn't try to protect institutional equities, and they look at the veteran, then we will solve this problem. And we will. So let's just do it. So I thank you all, I mean, profoundly from the bottom of my heart for coming and caring enough to make this trip. And everybody zooming in, I appreciate it. And with that, this roundtable is closed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.